All right, welcome back, everyone. We got to cover this story. This was from yesterday, May 14th, 2024. There were two pro-life activists, which the media calls anti-abortion, and we're going to get to why they use that term. But there were two pro-life activists that got sent. One, the main one, Lauren Handy, she got sentenced to 57 months in prison. And I'm going to bring this all together. And it is kind of crazy how in the United States you can get sentenced to 57 months in prison for protesting abortion, right? If you don't believe a woman should have the right to murder her children, you go to prison. Now, these people apparently are kind of nutcases anyway. They are kind of like the radicals of the the far right in a sense, similar to the climate activists. You'll see why in a minute. But anyway, you won't see the Washington Post or the BBC advocate for a man's right to murder his children. Only women should have that right, but they care about equality. And just so since we're on the topic of abortion too, the biggest problem with abortion is it is the lack of traditional family values. Because if you are pro-abortion, your argument is it is sometimes not wrong to murder a baby. Now, if you're pro-life, the argument is it is always wrong to murder a baby. I'm somewhere in the middle on that. I've always considered myself more pro-life. And here's why. I was raised as a young man to have the belief that you do not get a woman pregnant unless you intend to be a father and a husband. And that's the way that it should be. You should not get pregnant unless you intend to be a mother, a father, a husband, a wife. And a lot of these abortions are a result of stupid, irresponsible shit that is sometimes done by the women, but more often initiated by the man. More often, it's a man who puts a baby in her before he puts a ring on her. And this all ties into hookup culture and a lot of the shit that is going on in society today. And all of this is population control. It's all about getting rid of people. They don't want the traditional family. They want women, instead of women being nurturing, loving mothers, they want them sitting in an office cubicle for 8 hours a day answering a phone. Part of the reason why there's such a economic crisis right now is because of how many people that are in the workforce. Before women worked, this is going to be a highly controversial topic, but back before women worked, you didn't have inflation was unheard of. Abortion was unheard of. None of these things happened. This has all been a result of this new school, left-wing liberal bullshit. You go back years ago, a man and a woman got together, and the only reason they would really have sex is to procreate, to start a family. And the woman would stay at home and raise the children, and the father would go out and work and slave, and he didn't have to. The woman didn't have to work because you didn't have as many people in the workforce, so they didn't have to print out nearly as much money. And because they didn't have to print out nearly as much money, the U.S. dollar was at an all-time high. When women entered the workforce, it devalued the dollar because then they had to print out more money. Anytime they have to print out more money, you're going to have inflation. And I'm in Pennsylvania. You can call the unemployment compensation line right now, and you'll be on a half hour to 45-minute wait just to get through to somebody. It's incredible. And there's so many jobs out there right now that people are working that really don't need done. But they're doing it for $13, $14, $15 an hour because they're just trying to get by. And this is why, ultimately, they want to depopulate the earth. And, of course, climate change has a lot to do with it. Climate change is caused by humans. Too many human beings on earth using up the natural resources of the earth faster than the earth is naturally producing them. That's why they want to get rid of people with climate change and vaccines, and why they want everybody to be a homosexual because they're not going to procreate. All of this stuff is about getting rid of people. And again, people will say, well, and here's the thing. I know a lot of people will probably be pissed off at what I said, but here's the thing about women. Do women really want to work? Like the gender pay gap conspiracy theory. Okay, here's a good here's a good one, right? We only ever hear of this when it comes to prestige positions. A female politician, a female athlete, an actor, an actress. How come a female isn't making as much as a male? This, that, and the other. But yet no one ever talks about the lack of diversity when it comes to the lack of female automotive mechanics or plumbers or electricians or roofers or bricklayers or heavy equipment operators. No one ever talks about the lack of diversity in those fields, but yet we want to talk about the lack of diversity when it comes to six figures and beyond. You know, how many women do you know that work on an oil rig? Very few. The women I know, they work in an office, they work in a hospital, and they work in a school. And a lot of women love working those jobs because they get a couple months off per year. You get Easter break, Christmas break, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's the way a lot of women are. They're nurturing, they're caring. They don't want to work for 40, 50 hours a week. They don't want to do monotonous, disgusting work. And there are men that don't want to do that either. But in general, most jobs that you know are warehouse related or physically demanding, they're done by men because a lot of women don't want to do those jobs. And then if women don't want to do those jobs, then what do you do when it comes to diversity? You know, the vast majority of women, if they had a man making a 6-7 figure salary, they would gladly not work. They would much rather go out and go shopping or hang out with their girlfriends. Men, on the other hand, men are more reserved. You know, men don't have nearly as big of an issue in going out and working 40, 50 hours a week, working non-traditional hours, doing physically demanding work. This is the reason why men make more money, because they're more capable in a lot of instances. It's not a slight against women. It's just a fact. There's a biological difference between men and women. And, you know, when it comes to abortion, like I said before, I mean, you know, the pro-abortion is nothing more than pro-irresponsibility. You should not be irresponsible. You should always be responsible. I remember back, and this was years ago, and you know, when I got my first job at McDonald's in Slippery Rock, where Slippery Rock University is, I mean, I went to college parties, I went to frat houses, I hooked up with girls, and every single time, it was always safe sex. And there were some girls that some of them probably were on the political left. Others were probably on the political right. And I will tell you this, when you are honest and respectful of women and you always practice safety when you hook up with these girls, 100% of women will absolutely respect you. There was not one girl that did not respect me for wanting to be safe when we hooked up. And I'm not a fan of hookup culture. I'm just saying, you know, years ago when I was in my early 20s, late teens, I did that. You know, everything they're pushing today, this whole abortion thing has nothing to do with women's rights. Okay, this has to do with pushing population control. That's what all of this is. The whole girl boss. I don't need a man. Let me tell you something. Every single girl I know wants to meet Prince Charming. They want that moment where the guy proposes to her and she's in tears and she can have that picture taken and post it to all her social media accounts. Women want to get married. They want to be mothers. But what they're doing today is they're destroying the traditional family. They're turning men into a bunch of fags, and they're turning women into this boss girl where you don't need a man, when in reality, men, they built the world you're living in. I mean, let's be honest. For the women working in your office, what are you going to do if your air conditioning breaks? What are you going to do if your electric shuts off? Who are you going to call? You ain't calling Ghostbusters. You're going to call a repair technician who's going to be a guy. It's just the reality of it. But my point being that what's going on in the world and they're using abortion to divide people. There's no secret that, you know, in an election year, we're hearing these stories come out all the time. But this abortion, I'm telling you guys, this stuff is all about destroying the traditional family. They want women to be single, miserable, and childless. Those are the three key things: miserable, single, and childless. And I'm telling you right now, every girl wants a guy that's going to be strong, confident, and a provider. But you know what? They're teaching young girls today, you know what? Don't have that view. That's toxic masculinity. Go out and be the boss yourself. And you're seeing a lot of women on social media, these viral TikTok videos, etc. I see so many girls crying their eyes out because they don't have a man. They're not married. And these are women in their late 20s, early 30s that are this way. They're crying their eyes out. They're upset because they're working 40, 50 hours a week. They barely have any money to survive, to pay their rent, to buy groceries. And guess what? They don't have a man and they don't have children. And they're absolutely miserable. And this ties in to the mental health as well. You know, why is mental health such an issue? Because we're destroying femininity in girls and we're destroying masculinity in boys. That's as simple as I can put it. And I could go on for hours, but I just want to make that abundantly clear that and these stories are meant to divide us, they're by the numbers, and we're going to read this little excerpt here from Fox News. So it says 2 pro-life activists were sentenced to several years in prison Tuesday on charges of conspiracy, and we're going to get to that, against rights and violating the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances Act stemming from a 2020 rescue action at a Washington, D.C.-based abortion clinic. Lauren Handy, 30, was sentenced to 4 years and 9 months in prison. 4 years and 9 months is 57 months for organizing the protest, while co-defendant John Hinshaw, 69, was sentenced to 1 year and 9 months. Handy and Hinshaw were, along with 7 others, were convicted on the same charges. Blocked access to a Washington surgery clinic on October 22nd, 2020, while chaining themselves to furniture inside the clinic, according to the indictment. So, and it goes on to say that the hours-long protest was live streamed on one of the protesters' Facebook accounts. So, I want you to see how Lauren Handy, anti-abortion, John Hinshaw, I think did they misspell his name in here, or did I read it wrong? Yeah, here Fox News misspelled it. But yeah, Lauren Handy, anti-abortion, John Hinshaw, conspiracy. They all sum to 57. And this woman gets 57 months in prison for leading the protest. And I mean, you know, it is a sick world when you go to prison for you know, protesting abortion. I mean, if you are being, you know, really radical and doing stupid shit like chaining yourself to furniture, yeah, that is a ridiculous thing to do. But I mean, in general, I mean, again, you guys know what I'm trying to say. But notice again, the word conspiracy is 51, just like Lauren Handy, just like John Hinshaw. And so Lila Rose, who is one of the, you know, she is the owner of the liveaction.org, you know, which is a pro-life, you know, conservative news publication. She's like the face of the anti-abortion movement. She posts this. She says 30-year-old pro-life activist Lauren Handy has just been sentenced to 57 months in federal prison for handing roses and resources to women at an abortion facility. Meanwhile, abortionists who dismember and kill their children walk free, a grave injustice. And she's not wrong. You know, she's not wrong. I mean, here's another, you know, and again, I don't want to go off on a tangent. I don't want to make this video like an hour long, but here's another thing to think about. Like, again, the pro-abortion argument is it is sometimes not wrong to kill a baby. Now, and the argument that it's not a baby, that's ridiculous nonsense. The second your sperm fertilizes the egg, it's a baby. It's alive. Something cannot grow if it's not alive. So anybody who says it's not a baby, that's a moron and not worth debating. But when it comes to being pro-abortion, I get their side of it. There's already too many fucking losers, retards, and rejects in this world. We don't need any more. I get that. Here's my problem with the pro-abortion side. Okay, number one, they don't believe it's a baby, which is false. But number two, you cannot be pro-abortion. And I mean, like, for example, we have a governor in Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro. He is pro-abortion, but anti-death penalty. I mean, if that's not the greatest hypocrisy in our solar system, I don't know what is. You cannot be pro-abortion and stand on the headstones of 65 million babies that have been murdered since Roe v. Wade and then say, I'm anti-death penalty, I'm anti-gun, I don't want guns killing people, I don't want school shootings to happen. Like, in what fucking world does that make any sense? Like, do you need to be, electroshocked back into coherence? I mean, these are like the same assholes I would talk to during the COVID pandemic, the whole my body, my choice crowd. My body, my choice. So that only applies to murdering your children, but has nothing to do with wearing a mask, something that actually has to deal with your body and not someone else's body. I mean, that's ridiculous. And then they'll say, yeah, but the baby depends on my body. Okay, well, in the United States, you are not a legal adult until you're 18 years old. You're depending on your parents and you're depending on the government. So by that logic, then you should be allowed to legally murder anybody who's under the age of 18. Because they're not 18 is when you can legally sign your name, legally own a house, legally start a business. You can rent an apartment. You can't do any of that until you're 18 years old. So according to that logic, you should be allowed. And as far as the my body, my choice goes, well, why does that not apply to gun rights? There are 65 million babies that have been killed since Roe v. Wade via abortion. How many people have died from gun violence since Roe v. Wade? It ain't no 65 million people, not even close. So by the my body, my choice logic, I should be allowed to come into your house with my shotgun and murder your spouse and your children because my body felt like doing it, and my body, my choice. You see, this is why the my body, my choice doesn't matter. That's why it doesn't make any sense. If you are pro-abortion, you have to make the argument and explain why it is not wrong to sometimes murder a baby. You cannot hide behind the mythical my body, my choice bullshit. COVID-19 proved that to be completely false. So again, and then the pro-life side of it too, it has its flaws where it's like, okay, well, what about women who, are rape victims and women who are victims of, domestic violence and things like that? Because there are a lot of guys, a lot of fucked up guys out there that do take advantage of girls. And some of that is on the women for falling for it. But a lot of it is on the guys because guys, it is very easy to take advantage of a woman. Women are very emotional creatures. They're very easy to manipulate their feelings. It's very easy to tell a girl what she wants to hear so you can jump her bones. It's not a difficult thing to do if you're a guy. And, and again, I know what conservatives will say. They'll say, well, that's because people are not being raised with traditional values. If you're being raised with traditional conservative values, your son's not going to grow up to be a rapist. Your daughter's not going to grow up to be a whore. I get that. But again, I just, again, like I've said for years, I mean, you look at a lot of black women account for like 75% of abortions. And, black people also, are the victims of more overwhelmingly, about 75%, 3 out of 4 black children grow up in fatherless households and out of wedlock births. And that's also no coincidence as to why 3/4 of abortions are done by black women. So again, yeah, I do agree. We do need to bring back family. We do need to bring back traditional values. And that's not a bad thing. This gets viewed as like, oh, you want women to be uneducated house slaves. No, you want women to take up their natural feminine role in the relationship. You want men to take up the natural masculine role in a relationship. It would be far easier to get educated while you're a housewife than it would be when you're going out and working 40 hours a week as a man. I mean, think about it. How many of you, I got to be honest, when I was in school, okay, I graduated with my GED diploma in 2010, okay? I graduated we had our graduation at Butler Community College. I took my classes at Butler Intermediate High School down in the city of Butler here in, Pennsylvania. Here's something to think about. And I'll just use mathematics as an example here. You have to take pre-algebra, algebra 1, algebra 2, trigonometry, calculus. And then if you do that, then you get into, statistics. And once honestly, you don't want to get into calculus and statistics. Your mind will be absolutely fucking blown. Your mind will explode from confusion. You don't want to go higher than trigonometry, believe me. In most cases, you don't. I just got to be honest with you. It can be a pain in the ass. But do you know, of all that math I learned, pre-algebra, algebra 1, algebra 2, trigonometry, calculus, do you know how much of that I use in my everyday life? None. 0%. The majority of what you learn in school does not apply to everyday life. Sure, you need to know how to read and write. You need to learn decimals, percents, basic arithmetic, addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. These are important. But the majority of what you learn, unless you're going to be a doctor or a lawyer or a college professor or a teacher, you are not going to need to know the vast majority of this. The majority of jobs do not require that knowledge. So again, what's the harm in being, say, a housewife? A lot of women, even liberal ones, find a lot of times when they get married, they find out, you know what? And they fall in love and they're like, I kind of want to cook for my husband. I kind of want to make sure the house looks nice. It's part of the natural feminine. Just like for men, they want to be the masculine. They want to be the provider. They want to be the kind of person that's not afraid, to make somebody the permanent part of the pavement if they mouth off to their girl. This is just how relationships work. You can be educated and a housewife. You can be educated and have a 40-hour-a-week job. Okay, that being, you know what I mean? This thought that, you want women to just be uneducated house slaves, it's a conspiracy theory. It's not out there. Okay, there's nothing wrong with women working, and there's nothing wrong with women staying at home. But I'm telling you right now, the thought that you're uneducated just because you don't have a job or a prestigious position, it's ridiculous nonsense. The vast majority of stuff you learn in school will not be relevant in your career. The overwhelming majority of it will not be. And when you're at home and you have time off, you can literally go online and take classes for free. Take advanced mathematics classes, take advanced literature classes, English, history. You can learn all this, world history. I recently taught myself the periodic table again because I used to know all 118 elements, and over the last decade, I forgot half of them. So I recently went on and taught myself the periodic table again. I taught myself to learn every flag of the world, every country, every capital. You can still learn these things in your spare time. This attitude that you're uneducated because you're not working 40 or 50 hours a week. Again, what woman really wants to do that? Not a lot of women want to. Not a lot of men want to either, and that's a problem when men don't want to do it. But I could go on and on and on, but I'm going to leave it there. I think I made my point. Hopefully people interpret this correctly the way I mean for it to be interpreted. I'm going to leave it there, guys. I'll talk to you soon. Until next time.